Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jam Vishnu Patparam Sivarati Kacharya Stottar Shat Divine Grace of Bachelor in the Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jam Vishnu Patparam Sivarati Kacharya Stottar Shat Divine Grace Bhaktisiddhanta Sai Satika Samarat Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Krantarat Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Nitya Gaura Pranvalande Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Today we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 5, Text 1. Narado Vacha Deva Deva Namasteastu Deva Deva Namasteastu Bhuta Bhavana Purvacha Bhuta Bhavana Purvacha Tatvijanihi Yajnanam Tatvijanihi Yajnanam Atma Tattva Nidarshanam Atma Tattva Nidarshanam Narado Vacha Deva Deva Namasteastu Bhuta Bhavana Purvacha Tatvijanihi Yatnyanam Atma Tattva Nidarshanam. Narado Vacha Deva Deva Namastestu Bhuta Bhavana Purvacha Tatvijani Yatyanam Atma Nidarshanam. Narado Vacha Deva Deva Namastestu Bhavana Purvacha Tatvijanihi Yatnyanam Atma Tattva Nidarshanam. Narado Vacha Deva Deva Namastestu Bhavana Purvacha Tatvijani Yatnyanam Atma Tattva Nidarshanam. Word to word. Narado Vacha. Shri Narada said, Deva of all the demigods, Deva, the demigod, Namaha, obeisances, Te, unto you as to our Bhuta Bhavana, the generator of all living beings, Purvacha, the firstborn, Tatvijanihi, please explain that knowledge, Yatnyanam, which knowledge, Atma Tattva, transcendental, Nidarshanam, specifically directs. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Chaitanya Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. Sri Narad Muni asked Brahmaji, O chief amongst the demigods, O firstborn living entity, I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Please tell me that transcendental knowledge which specifically directs one to the truth of the individual soul and the supersoul. Purport. The perfection of the parampara system, or the path of disciplic succession, is further confirmed. In the previous chapter it has been established that Brahmaji, the first living entity, received knowledge directly from the Supreme Lord, and the same knowledge was imparted to Narada, the next disciple. Narada asked to receive the knowledge, and Brahmaji imparted it upon being asked. Therefore, asking for transcendental knowledge from the right person and receiving it properly is the regulation of this disciplic succession. This process is recommended in the Bhagavad Gita 4.2. The inquisitive student must approach a qualified spiritual master to receive transcendental knowledge by surrender, submissive inquiries, and service. Knowledge received by submissive inquiries and service is more effective than knowledge received in exchange for money. The spiritual master in the line of disciplic succession from Brahma and Narada has no demand for dollars and cents. A bona fide student has to satisfy him by sincere service to obtain knowledge of the relation and nature of the individual soul and the supersoul. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gnananjana Chalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamvayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrachatam Sahakanarudatam Tam Tam Sachivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parichana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahakana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandha Jagatpate Kopesha Kopika Kanta Radha Tanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gorange Radhe Vrindavaneshware Vrishabhana Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vancha Kalpatarupascha Kripa Sindhyabha Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadigora Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you for coming, and please bless me that I may be able to speak. Today the very topic is what it's all about in speaking on transcendental knowledge, to repeat by the blessings of the senior devotees of the Acharyas. So I also need such blessings. And so, yesterday's Grace Venu Vadak Prabhu was beautifully concluding the 4th chapter, and he pointed out that majority of the chapter was actually Shukadeva Goswami, after having heard the question of Maharaj Parikshit about the creation, that he simply offered his obeisances and prayers and glorifications to the Lord, and then at the end also to his spiritual master, to Srila Vyasadeva. And then at the very last verse, which we read yesterday, was where he simply pointed out that what he's going to do now is simply to repeat what he heard from the conversation that, because the same question that was being asked by Sri Narada to Lord Brahma, and that he's going to repeat that. So all that showed already the importance of how transcendental knowledge is transmitted, namely simply through repetition from the pure source, ultimately from Krishna, coming through all the self-realized souls, giving it, further transferring it, like Prabhu was giving the famous example of just like a postman. We are not supposed to play around with the message, but simply to deliver it, and that's how it works. And also it showed already by the attitude that Shukadeva Goswami exemplified there, of his offering obeisances in that way, and to be able to simply to repeat, and not having any desire to think, I'm great and I can tell my opinion. So that showed also already, which was pointed out by Prabhupada in yesterday's purport and today again, of how transcendental knowledge comes through submission and service and inquiry in that way. Like today again he quoted on Bhagavad Gita 4:34 of Tatvidi pranipatine pariprashnena sevaya upatikshantati jnanena statadarshinaha, where Krishna tells from the 4th chapter, after explaining all the different ways of sacrifice, that then, how do you know then what specifically what you should do, how you should do that? For that, because Krishna, he gives in Bhagavad Gita, he gives all the transcendental knowledge that is needed for a theoretical understanding, and also of course how to implement it in our lives. But still, also he instructs us there that still we need to approach a spiritual master as well, and then get specific instructions of how we can, despite all our conditionings and the obstacles that we face, how we can implement it. And so in transcendental knowledge we can never, it's not something we can demand, but we have, it's about attitude and to be qualified to receive it. And because otherwise, even if you are lucky and get knowledge from the right source, get transcendental knowledge, but if we don't have the right attitude, then it will just stay as theory and it won't enter our heart. And the whole the special thing also about transcendental knowledge is that it's not something static, just something to keep in the mind, to speculate on. but it's something dynamic which transforms our heart. And after all, it's non different from Krishna. It's directly related to Krishna. It's also Krishna, and thus Krishna, he's eager to enter our heart again, actively, not just as the super soul, the overseer and permitter, and to make us ready again to reciprocate in love with him as in our constitutional position. So knowledge, transcendental knowledge, is supposed to soften our heart, and if that is not happening, then if we rather get proud, then it shows we don't have the proper attitude of how to approach and use such knowledge. Like we see that even in the I read it in CC, it's quoted there, one verse from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, quite simple definition of like what's in our constitutional position, what's then the highest stage, that of love of God, of prema. And Srila Rupa Goswami defines there that the very first quality he defines there is what we just spoke about, namely that it's when the heart becomes completely softened. So the verse goes, Samyan masrinita svanto mamatvati jayankitaha bhavaha saeva sandratma bhutayi premanigatyate. So he tells that because we know the previous stage before prema is that of bhava, of having already ecstatic emotions in love of God, but not fully developed, not in full mature stage, which is then called prema. But so when this bhava fully matures, fully softens the heart, then that is prema. So the heart is fully soft. Secondly, second line is mama tva, mama, mine, tva, yours. So means indicating feeling of possessiveness. Generally, when we hear that, we have that in relation of ignorance, abhida, that we think, this is mine, this is yours. We are all small proprietors, forgetting that the Lord is actually the proprietor. But in that case, it's used in the high stage of transcendental realization that you have actually a strong feeling of possessiveness in relation to the Lord. Because that's what we see, like in recent classes, especially in CC classes from His Grace Darshan Krishna Prabhu, we heard also about the glories of the love of the Rajavasis, that they, even though they have all the transcendental knowledge, but it gets overpowered by the intensity of their love, which makes them think and feel then that they have this strong feeling of possessiveness, that I need to take care of Krishna, Krishna needs us for his pleasure, like for the gopis and for the parents. So that is also a symptom of prema, this strong feeling of possessiveness in relationship to the Lord. And lastly, it's described when this bhava becomes completely condensed and intensified. It's the third line. But so even, of course, for most of us, especially for me, we're far, far away from that. But still, I found it. That's why when I recently came across it again, that I thought, it looks quite simple, and that I memorized it because it's also reminds us, even in our lower stages, of simple principles of how we should, for our attitude, that we have, our heart has become soft. Has to become soft, so we have to be, which also means we always have to be ready to be molded by our authorities, by senior devotees, and obviously in our whole behavior, especially with other Vaishnavas, that we have to become soft-hearted, and in terms of possessiveness with Krishna, that at least we can endeavor that we take proper responsibility for the services we get and take pleasure in that we never see it as a burden, but that we see, I'm fully unqualified to do devotional service at all anyway, and so, but Gopinath is so kind, he even gives me not just random service, but he gives me specific responsibilities, which enables me to, in some way or other, a little bit develop that also of positive possessiveness to the Lord. That okay, I know the Lord, He doesn't need me. Obviously, that would be false pride if you think, yeah, it's dependent on me in that way of ignorance. But positively, we can say, okay, the Lord, out of His causeless mercy, He gives me this service, and if I use developing anxiety for, okay, I need to do that properly, then that is positive possessiveness in that way. And so yeah, in terms of, to conclude that with this difference of how to really receive transcendental knowledge of, or rather, depending on the attitude, if we are submissive, then that it will soften our heart and we'll become humble and meek. Whereas, and we will, that we can also, another symptom of that test that we see if, do we, by getting more knowledge, do we feel more dependent on the Lord, on the mercy of the devotees of the Lord, of association, or do we feel more independent? Oh, now I know more, now I know how to figure it out and everything. Because we know we have to, even like, famously that it's explained in Chaitanya Charitamrita as well, that even at the highest stages of prema, that we still need devotee association. Actually, in that stage, then they feel the dependency, this feeling of dependency increases all the time. So it's never that, but transcendent knowledge that we should feel more independent. That's then counterproductive. Then we don't take it properly. And then, thinking there's many famous examples of, even in the Bhagavatam itself, of devotees how they received the knowledge and how the effect it had on them. For example, Dhruva Maharaj obviously is a famous example of how he also by Narad Muni got the knowledge as a 5-year-old boy, and within 6 months was able to reach perfection, although he even had this strong material desire of getting a kingdom greater than even Lord Brahma, his great-grandfather. So that shows one example showing the power of transcendental knowledge received properly and followed sincerely. Then also, of course, Prahlad Maharaj, he received transcendental knowledge while he was still in the womb of his mother, and while actually Narad Muni instructed his mother, Kayadu, but he was the one who took full advantage of it. I mean, obviously we know who is Nityasita, but still, it also shows in the pastime the power of that, because he was able to, by hearing, assimilated the knowledge so much so that he then, we know, also as around 5-year-old boy, then that he was already tortured by his father, who tried in so many ways to kill him even, but he had heard so properly that he was able to remember the Lord all the time, even in those situations, and still, rather than getting scared, still boldly preach to the classmates and also to his own father. And then, of course, even Srila Vyasadeva himself, who is the literal incarnation of the Lord, even he became despondent when, after having compiled all the Vedic literatures, all the knowledge which means all the knowledge that's available in the whole universe, but still he was despondent because he was still needed the guidance of his spiritual master. So that also shows that it's not only about getting the theory, but we need the direct guidance of the spiritual master as well. And also then Narad Muni, when he instructs Srila Vyasadeva, he also tells from his own history how he got perfection by hearing from the Bhaktivedantas as a boy, and also showing. But how did he hear? He also humbly served them in whatever little way he could, assisting his mother, and also took the remnants of them with their permission. So he showed his humility, his sincerity, and so they gave him his blessings and gave him the knowledge which he then followed for the rest of the lifetime. So much so that he got the direct audience of the Lord, and then famously we know the Lord told him, I'm sorry to tell, but you can't see me anymore this lifetime. You need to perfect your bhakti, and then in next lifetime then you'll see me again, and next lifetime that's then here how he still is grazing all existence, the universe, spiritual and material, and delivering all the fallen souls. And so, and another point I was thinking about this transfer of transcendental knowledge is that it's most importantly, like I remember that from a class from Chaitanya Charan Prabhu on Bhagavad Gita, that it's a transfer of, most importantly, of the essence of knowledge, namely of the desire to serve Krishna, and not so much of technical details of the knowledge. That might be secondary. And sometimes, like if something is technically wrong, it's not so important as long as we have the essence. So, because what is the essence? The essence is to reawaken our dormant love for Krishna, to be situated in our constitutional position. And that a bit later in the second canto, in 10th chapter, we come across this famous verse that, especially the last line, Prabhupada quotes many times. So the verse goes like that: Nirodhasyano shayanam atmana sa shaktibihi muktir hitvan vata rupam swarupena vyavastitihi. So there it says that the living entities and other potencies merge in the Mahavishnu as the Lord lies down and winds up the cosmic manifestation. Liberation means to be being situated in one's eternal, what is it? Eternal or constitutional, form, and which he attains after giving up the gross and subtle, changeable gross and subtle bodies. So, especially the last line, then Swarupena Vyavyastitihi, we hear that so many times. And that is the essence, that we need to get rid of the changeable, gross and subtle bodies of our misconceptions, what we think in our mind, and we simply need to realize us as the servant of the Lord. Like for example, we see if you would just get hung up with technicalities, that is something. In Karma Kanda, there it is very important, because we see examples of like King Nirga in Krishna book, how he, after doing so like almost unlimited amount of charity to the Brahmanas, then from one unknown, unintentional mistake that this cow ran over to the other herd, and then was which was already donated to one Brahmana, then was given to, and again donated to another Brahmana, and just because of that, he at the end, had to take birth as a lizard. So, and another example is King Prachina Parishat, whom also Narad Muni preached to. But while as Narad Muni preached to him, he showed him in the sky all the animals who were ready to avenge for the suffering that King Prachina Parishat was responsible for to them. Although again, he didn't do any apparent mistake. He simply was not doing devotional service, but rather absorbed performing nicely all the pious activities, the karmakanda sacrifices. But in those sacrifices, it so happens that sometimes there's some mistake is made in chanting of, because we know the point is that in those previous ages, brahmanas had the ability to, when they sacrifice an animal, then actually by chanting mantras properly, then the animal would be revived or even given then a new body or even a human body. But it so happens sometimes, if that's the thing in karmakanda, if there's one small mistake, then it doesn't work, and then it has an opposite effect many times even. So in those cases when it happens that the animal doesn't get revived, then every one of them involved in the sacrifice, obviously also the king who is conducting the sacrifice, he has to get the karmic reaction, and that's what Narad Muni showed to him. And then at the end, of course, we know he told him the famous story of allegory of Puranjana, and then he renounced everything and took up to devotional service. But so all this also shows that it's not so important that we want to be right and want to be seen by others as we are right in everything we do and so on. But rather we always need to focus on the essence, which is are we getting closer to Gopinath? Are we getting closer to devotees, as realizing ourselves as the servant of the servant? And also, for that we heard in yesterday's class, also in the CC class, Tojan Krishna Prabhu mentioning the example of Maharaj Yudhishthira, how he, being incarnation of Dharmaraj, how he was famous as never having spoken a lie in his life, but then at the end, Krishna had told him to lie because to be able to kill Dronacharya, right? How was it? Where he told where he was to be, or where he had to tell about that Ashwatthama the elephant is dead, and but he did it and hesitated to do that. And as Prabhu was mentioning, actually, like people sometimes think that he fell down from his platform because he lied, but rather it was because he hesitated in following the order of Krishna. And so and Prabhu explained that's always the essence to keep in mind, that the highest morality is to follow the order of Krishna, to follow the order of the spiritual master, and everything else simply has to assist in that way. And because how is it that, like in Karma Kanda and those other processes, that it's like so technical, it has to be fully correct, otherwise you get a wrong result, whereas in devotional service it's seems we can be more lenient. Obviously that's because devotional service is directly in contact personally with Krishna, and all he sees is our sincerity. He doesn't care about any other externalities, because after all, everything is given by him anyway. We can never impress Krishna. There's nothing we have that we can show off with. It's all we can do is trying to become more sincere, to please Krishna. And this obviously means also that we cannot take advantage of, yes, we don't have to be always so completely right, but rather that it's always about sincerely trying our best to please Krishna. And also, like Prabhu was mentioning yesterday, that because for bhakti actually there is only one currency to acquire it, and that is intense greed to get it. Currency, it's used like that sometimes, obviously we know bhakti is causeless, which means we can never demand it, but only if we really desire it, then obviously Krishna, out of his causeless mercy, he will consider to give it to us. He will bestow us with devotion to him. And Another example I was thinking of in terms of more than not only getting the theoretical knowledge, but to know how to apply it in specific cases, is when in Chaitanya Charitamrita, when Mahaprabhu travels in Vrindavan, that's chapter 17, and when he then reaches Mathura itself and goes there to the temple of Keshavichi, and obviously, like always, when he sees the Lord Keshava there, then he dances in ecstasy, sings, but there it so happens that there is one other Brahmana who sees the Lord, who also immediately falls down, catches the lotus feet of the Lord, and then also joins him dancing in ecstasy. And so after the kirtan, eventually then Mahaprabhu takes aside this Brahmana and asks him, how come you're such an advanced devotee? I can see the ecstatic symptoms you exhibited. And so the Brahmana explains to him that he's a disciple of Madhavendra Puri. And the Brahmana from his side, he was also astonished to see that, because before that he only had seen it in Madhavendra Puri, such symptoms of love of Godhead. And so then Mahaprabhu's assistant, Balabhadra Bhattacharya, explains then to the Brahmana the relationship of Mahaprabhu to Madhavendra Puri, namely through him being disciple of Isvaresvara Puri, who is a disciple of Madhavendra Puri, as we know. And then Mahaprabhu accepts the invitation by this Brahmana, but the Brahmana being, because actually in the Prabhupada explains, quoting Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that in northwestern India apparently there's 3 subdivisions of Vaishyas, and the Brahmanas who guide the 2 lower class Vaishyas, they are called Sanodiya Brahmana. And this Brahmana, he was such a Brahmana, which means, and they are considered lower class. So even though he was a Brahmana, still he was considered lower class. So generally, sannyasis then wouldn't accept prasadam from such a Brahmana. And that's why, and he himself, obviously being humble, he felt unqualified to cook for the Lord. So he requested Balabhadra Bhattacharya to please cook. But Mahaprabhu insisted, no, you please cook yourself. Because actually before in the story, how the Sanodiya Brahmana related how he got the mercy of Madhavendra Puri, he told him also that Madhavendra Puri, one day he was traveling there in Mathura, and thus he was, came, so he was, the Brahmana invited him, and Madhavendra Puri accepted him as a disciple and accepted also prasad there. So, and Mahaprabhu, knowing that, told the Brahmana that again, that Madhavendra Puri himself, he came and also accepted prasad, so of course I will do as well. And so he explains then that a devotee's behavior establishes the true essence or true purpose of religious principles. So that's the point I wanted to come to here, that even though, yes, we have the scriptures tell us all the knowledge, but still to really apply it properly, many times we are dependent on the instructions and on the examples given by the acharyas, such as Madhavendra Puri, of course, in this case. And and one more example from CC in terms of how powerful the transcendental knowledge can transform is, I told it one time before, the famous pastime of Mrigadi, the hunter who was, and briefly, like how is it given in CC there? It's when in the chapter what's the chapter number? 20. Yeah, chapter number 24. The 61 explanations of the Atmaram verse. So, because there the chapter begins with, before that, the previous 3 chapters, Mahaprabhu had instructed Sanatana Goswami on first Sambandha, then Abhidheya and Prayojana. And then after that, then Sanatana Goswami told Mahaprabhu that I have heard that you had explained the famous Atmaram verse in 18 different ways to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So I would also have a desire to hear that place. And Mahaprabhu, in his great humility and sweetness, he tells Sanatana Goswami that I'm one madman and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is another madman. So he took my words to be true. But actually I don't remember anything that I told there. But if somehow by the power of your association I will be made to remember something again, then I shall relate it to you. So in that way he starts, and then as you know, as the chapter is called, and he explains to Sanatana Goswami the Atmaram verse in 61 different ways. And and in course of that, one of them is when he explains the word Nirgaranta, as being one who is very poor or who is a hunter. Then he relates the story of Mrigari, namely to show the power of the association of a devotee to turn even someone who is as degraded as a hunter to also become fully engaged in devotional service, become Atmaram. So, and as we know, the story goes there that one day Narad Muni, after having visited Lord Vishnu in Vaikuntha, he comes near, I think it was near Prayaga, I forgot the place. But so when he comes across in the forest wounded animals lying half dead around, then he feels obviously great compassion and wants to find out what's the reason for that. And so a bit later on the path he comes across one hunter hiding, and he approaches the hunter, and the hunter first gets upset because of Narad Muni is approaching. The animals would run away did run away. But the first amazing point is there that Narad Muni already right from the start he's always in preaching mode. So even though he came there actually because of his compassion for the animals, like we would then, if we think, oh, this guy might be the one, then we would rather be angry. But rather, what did Narad Muni do? It's explained there that simply by Narad Muni's influence, Narada Prabhav, that the hunter, even though he intended to blaspheme Narad Muni, to chastise him, that he couldn't utter anything abusive. So that's the greatness of Narad Muni's preaching, that right from the start he made sure that this hunter, he wouldn't commit an offense against him, because that wouldn't allow him then obviously to become a devotee further by his instructions. So then rather the Mrigari instead addresses him as, "O great saint, O Goswami," and asks him, why do you come here in the forest? And then the Narad Muni of course asks about the animals, if they belong to him, and Mrigari the hunter says kind of proudly, "Yes, I'm the one who is doing that, and that's my profession. I'm Mrigari, I'm the enemy of animals, as the name says." And Narad Muni explains to him then that this, first he starts then by begging him for one kind of charity, and what he begs is that he at least doesn't half kill the animals, but rather kills them fully. And then Mrigari asks, of course, why is that? And he explains, Narad Muni, that because by half killing you're simply purposefully giving them pain, and thus your sinful reactions are even much greater than by normal killing. And so then eventually Mrigari realizes that he did this his whole life as a profession, so he must have accumulated so many sinful reactions, and he becomes fearful of that, and so he surrenders then to Narad Muni and tells him what can I do now if I'm facing all those sinful reactions, and Narad Muni so Mrigari tells, whatever you say I shall do, and Narad Muni tells him that first of all break your bow, and then I shall tell you what to do after. And that Prabhupada explains there that is actually the process of initiation, that we first of all, like breaking the bow symbolizes that he has to stop killing animals, has to stop sinning. So first of all we have to commit to not commit sinful activities again, and also then we have to be ready to take the instructions fully. And so that is the process of initiation, as Prabhupada tells there. And then further Narad Muni assures him then also that don't worry, I shall provide you with what the necessities. You don't need, because obviously the hunter is all his life, that's how he lived, by hunting. And if that is the first thing to give up, then obviously that's a big challenge. But he had the faith in Narad Muni, and so Narad Muni instructed him then to distribute, go back home, distribute all the riches to the brahmanas, and then both he and his wife should leave home and live simply in a cottage in the forest. In other words, he told him to take vanaprastha, because he didn't tell him to take sannyas straight away, but rather he can take his wife, and which he did there. But nevertheless, and further also then what to do, other than chanting the holy name, he also told him to worship Tulsi Marani on a raised platform there. And so Mrigari followed very nicely, and then one day, Narad Muni told his friend Parvat Muni that he desires to visit one of his disciples there, and so they came there, and we know famously that Mrigari, as he approached Narad Muni and wanted to fall down off his dandavat, that he didn't even do it straight away, because he had to first gently remove the ants crawling there on the path that he didn't want to hurt. And so that was exemplifying how transformational devotional service and transcendental knowledge is, how soft the heart becomes when we from taking pleasure in giving pain to animals, to rather than not being able to tolerate thinking that I would hurt or kill small ants there on the path. And then further, they worship the saints, nicely wash their feet, and then he starts, out of his ecstasy of seeing his spiritual master, he starts to chant and dance in ecstasy the holy name. And when Parvat Muni sees that, he tells to Narad Muni, certainly you are a touchstone. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains there, Prabhupada quotes that is the way of seeing how good that's the way to understand the position of a Vaishnava, how good a touchstone a devotee is. In other words, how many devotees one can make in his life, how many other souls he can impart this transcendental knowledge to, and to transform their lives as well. And yeah, so that's this famous pastime, also showing how one important point also with all of that in terms of getting knowledge, getting instructions is that Ganesh Buddha said that also many times that along with the instruction of the spiritual master comes also the empowerment, comes the mercy. So if we take advantage of that, that is why, like Prabhu was yesterday in this amazing pastime, giving this amazing pastimes of how Bhagavad Gita got published eventually, of how like it would, like he said that I think he said Brahmananda Prabhu, right, was the one who went there and got it published. That he didn't even have faith actually, even when Prabhupada told him that, yeah, just go there and just tell that I have a Bhagavad Gita to publish. But still, I mean, obviously still he had dedication and faith to follow the spiritual master, to follow Srila Prabhupada, even though with the conditioning he couldn't see, okay, how it could really be just so easy as Prabhupada says. But yeah, this amazing example shows the power of the instruction of the spiritual master, that it can, even if we might not be able to conceive of it, but inconceivable things can be done in devotional service by following the instructions of the authorities. So I'll conclude with that. If there's any questions or comments, please. Otherwise, Grantarachima Bhagavatam Ki Jaya.